This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Hi, and welcome to The Clash. It is where we take a Christian worldview and allow it to clash into the culture around us. And when it's all said and done, hopefully, we create a few moments that will inspire, encourage, and maybe change your life. You never know. I'm Jeff Dixon. I'm joined by the one and only Chris Whaley, also known as the Saint.
Yep. Hopefully to make you laugh, too.
In this episode especially, because we did an episode recently about can Christians have fun? And then we kind of put a little subtitle in about Christian superstition. And we had such a good time that this would be the more fun, less superstition episode. We're going to keep kind of rolling down that train of thought.
Yeah.
Just because last time it was going so well.
It was. It went fast. Went real fast.
But then this time it'll probably stink.
You never know.
But we'll find out.
But maybe we'll laugh a lot.
Well, we could, and you'll be the judge of that. But we're really going to put under the microscope again this idea that a Christian is saved and we've secured heaven at that point, and Jesus came to give us abundant life. And part of that abundant life is the ability to look at life with a lens that says, we're able to have a sense of joy and meaning and purpose, and we ought to have a sense of humor about it.
I think so. I mean, Jeff, be honest. Who wants to be around somebody that, looks like they've been sucking on green persimmons all the time,
Well, they don't. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's that old catchphrase, no one gets out of this thing alive. So we get to choose how we're going to face life.
Yep.
And if you're a Christian, you've already made the best choice. And that gives you then the freedom to kind of tackle and chase life a little bit differently.
Right.
As I was making some notes for this, I think it's possible, and you can tell me if you disagree, and it's okay if you do, to be holy and hilarious at the same time.
I like that. Holy and hilarious.
And maybe that's the call of God, right? To be a little bit holy and be hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
Because they're not mutually exclusive. And I think in the original episode we said that Jesus, he was invited to parties. People wanted to be around him. And you got to believe that his ability to laugh and his sense of humor is one of the things that made him so appealing.
Right. The Pharisees didn't like that.
No, and they don't. When I read about them, they don't strike me as happy people.
Yeah, they're a lot like a lot of church people today.
And why is that? How did we convince ourselves that to be serious about Jesus means that we can't have a sense of humor?
I try to think about maybe some people had some bad experiences in life, and that adds to it. Maybe they just, I don't know, maybe they had a bad childhood, or I can't really come up with a great answer for that. So I'm stalling, Jeff. What do you think?
Well, I just think that sometimes, church people make fasting look like a party. Now again, you have to be in church to understand what I just said at that point, because that's just one of those things. Because obviously fasting is you're not eating, and I think I picked up as a child that laughter was just not something that was appropriate at a church setting. And I mean, and of course, we're here at the Church of 434 in beautiful Winter Springs, Florida. And you can find us at touchandchange.net, by the way. But we use laughter a lot.
Right.
In the way we communicate, we I always tell people, we don't take ourselves seriously, but we take Jesus very seriously.
Right.
And as a result, we got a lot to laugh about.
Right. Absolutely.
And but there are some things, and we talked about it even last time, that situations that aren't funny unless they happen in church.
Right.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
You've been a pastor. And I don't know how to delicately move through this. But, there are just some sounds that the body makes that are incredibly funny in church.
Oh, yeah. You're
Because
not going to say that on live, on national TV.
But when you hear them, you can see everyone around deflating like a balloon because they're dying to laugh.
Oh, yeah.
And we've made
And you're not supposed to.
Not supposed to laugh.
Yep.
Not supposed to laugh.
Yep. I've heard those sounds, Jeff.
Have you?
I have.
Uh-huh.
I heard one of them in a wedding one time.
What?
Yep. Yep. I'm doing the wedding, and the best man, it was like, and like, and the bride was like this because she knew it's being taped, and the groom was like this, busting out laughing. Yeah. And it's usually kids, some kids and old men,
Sure.
That do that kind of stuff.
Neither one knows any better. they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. I got to go back to fasting.
Okay. I didn't really think fasting was funny, but that's okay. Yeah.
This is funny. I was at a pastor's conference. You might have been at this pastor's conference. I'm not going to say where it was because there might be. But anyway, this pastor's conference, and they're introducing this pastor that's going to speak, and they said he has been on a 40-day fast. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, will the guy have strength to even speak? And he just gave this glowing introduction for this pastor who'd been on a 40-day fast. And he came out and he was a little short, fat guy. I mean, real fat. And I'm thinking, what kind of fast has he been on, I mean, you might have been there, Jeff. And when we're off the air, I'll tell you who it was.
I'm not going to make any comments on that.
But I wasn't the only one that got it because I heard a couple of other guys around me. They're all going, they're laughing, saying, what kind of fast was that? Because he's short and fat. I'm sorry, it didn't have anything to do with laughter.
No, it does because the other thing that happens sometimes in a church environment is if we're notorious for filling up every bit of silent space with noise in church. And so I don't know if you've ever seen this, but in church,
excuse me,
if it gets quiet at the wrong time, man, it is like a dog hunting a duck. I mean, it is. Everyone starts looking around, see who forgot something, see who dropped what, and again, I think that church is that prime environment. It's prime time for funny things to happen.
Yeah.
I remember there was a minister of education who, a good friend of mine, loved this guy, very influential in my life. One day he got up there and was getting ready to give announcements, and as he gave announcements, what he didn't know, but what the entire congregation saw, is that his zipper was down. And so he is standing in front of 500 people, and he has this white holy spot right there around this crotch area, and so no one is listening to announcements, and the ripple of laughter kind of starts at the front and starts rippling back, but he doesn't know, he has no idea what people are laughing at, and so they're trying to be as courteous as possible. And not trying to, but you can't. It's just funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And there's a couple announcements he made that seemed to just make the whole moment funnier.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the announcement, he said, "Let's pray." and so when everybody closed their eyes, you heard zoop. And he zipped his pants. He figured it out along the way. That's not funny unless it happens in church. And no one knows that day. One song we sang. No one can remember one song that we lifted in praise to the Most High God.
Yeah.
They have no idea
Yeah.
what the pastor said with a sermon that he had slaved hours over, and the Spirit had talked to him and laid these things on his heart. He had laid them out to give us insights into God. Nobody walked out the door remembering what they remembered is somebody had to fly down and they had to zip it up. That's funny. And it's generally funny because it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Or you can laugh about it.
Right.
And the guy that happened to later on would indeed laugh about it. I mean, he was
Later on?
Funny guy. Yeah, he was a funny guy. Same guy on another Sunday morning. in this particular church, the staff would have to sit on the platform. And so,
in the little bitty pews?
No, no. We had chairs. I mean, we had these nice chairs. I mean, they were, well, the problem is they were cushion chairs. And you're sitting up in front of a congregation of people, and so you're sitting like to the left-hand side if you're in the congregation of the pastor. So, there's 5 chairs that are there, and then, of course, the pastor would preach, and everybody was watching him, but you're sitting up there in the most comfortable chair in the house, which lends itself to toasting off in the middle of the sermon. And on this particular Sunday, same guy had managed to doze off during the sermon and got to the end, and it was time for the invitation. And the way the invitation worked was that then the staff would reverently, we would all get up and make our way down to the floor so that we could be there to greet the thousands that were going to come forward from the balcony during the invitation. And this sounds so sacrilegious to talk about, but as we're doing this, he had dozed off, and we're on the platform, and we know he's dozed off, but we're also far enough away we can't really help him, and we probably would have helped him because we had a lot of mercy gifts.
You're that kind of guy.
I'm that kind of guy. We probably would have helped him, but the way but our seating arrangement really didn't lend itself to sort of a reach over and slap the guy, right? So he had dozed off and managed to have that holy, kind of sitting like that. And at the end of the moment, when it was time, that sudden rush of movement, because we were all getting up to move, he woke up. It jarred him awake. And for whatever reason, and maybe it's just because he came out of that semi-almost deep sleep, whatever, because he'd had about 10 minutes of going down. I mean, had he snored, it would have been a great day. But it wasn't. But as he got up, his legs got twisted. And so as he got up, his legs got twisted, and he rolled like a bowling ball across the platform. He went down, and he did like this body roll, and he's got 2 rolls in before he finally kind of got his legs underneath him. That's how we started the invitation. And I'm one of those guys where, I don't laugh at the most appropriate times, I guess, because man, I lost it. I mean, I lost it. It was hysterical. It was funny, and then he popped right back up too, which I was impressed with because I thought, man, I didn't know he had that kind of elasticity in his muscles still. So he popped back up and he got down to the spot, and he got down front and he looked over at me with this big old grin, like he had just been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And I will say, I was so moved I was crying during that invitation. The only one who didn't enjoy it was the pastor. He thought it was horrible. As a matter of fact, we heard about it that afternoon, and actually in a staff meeting it was called to talk about what had happened. And it wasn't much long. Shortly thereafter, they took those chairs off the platform. We sat on the front row after that because it was just it didn't work well.
That's shocking.
Yeah. That's not happy. That's not funny anywhere but church. No, that's not funny in a doctor's office, a dentist office. That's not funny.
No, but it's funny in church.
It's only funny in church. That is a moment that if you're in church, that'll change your life if you're a kid.
Well, we need to hem this up and go to a break.
Yeah, we probably do.
We do.
I'm going to pray during the break for forgiveness.
And I want to laugh some more, too.
Okay, sounds good. We'll be right back.
All right.
Hi, Jeff Dixon. You might recognize me from The Clash, but that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to invite you to visit a website. It's touchandchange.net. Touchandchange.net. That is the website for the ministry of the Church at 434, where I am the pastor. Chris Whaley is one of our pastors on staff. And so while you're familiar with us, you may not be familiar with some of the resources that we have to offer that we think will help you in your journey of faith. And you can find all sorts of stuff there with brand new programming that's released every night at 7 o'clock. And you can join us for worship live each and every Sunday morning at 9 or 11:15. Or you can watch streaming reruns of those worship services. And you can go back all the way back to when I had dark hair. And so we would love for you to come and join us and be a part of the journey of faith with us at the Church at 434 at touchandchange.net. Hi, welcome back to the second part of this more fun, less superstition episode, I suppose.
Well, I don't know about less superstition.
Yeah, we're kind of poking fun at Christians and their sense of humor or lack of humor sometimes, but also kind of talking about the spiritual dynamic of the fact that we're to live with joy. It doesn't mean that everything is funny, but it means learning to laugh really does change or help us with our outlook on life, and I think we have a lot of reasons to be joyful.
Yeah.
Now, in church, though, there are some things that we, I think, become, and we don't use the word superstition, but our traditions, and when that tradition gets broken,
Yeah.
we react like superstitious people, like we've just broken a rule
Right.
that wasn't allowed to be broken. Now, have you seen things in churches?
Oh, yeah. And,
That-
and the good thing is we can laugh about it.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
We
no
can
doubt.
laugh about it. Yeah. Well, I think of the dress in modern day churches has changed drastically. It has. I mean, Jeff, it's not unusual to see people come in with flip-flops on.
Sure.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, that. And in the old days, you think that would have? How do you think that would have gone over?
Probably not very well.
Not very well.
Yeah.
Or somebody that even wore shorts to church.
Yeah.
So you got to think about how were they dressed? When Jesus physically walked on this earth, and when the church was being formed, how were they dressed? The way that everybody was dressed in those days, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes we lose sight of that because, I think that you would have come to church and you would have been presentable, but you would have been wearing what would have been the normal dress of the day.
Right, right.
I know it's probably for early church leaders, they probably would have dressed up, if you want to use that word. But no, I think we kind of lose sight of that, and I come from a background where the phrasing was used often. Well, it's Sunday morning, you bring your Sunday best
Right.
to the house of the Lord.
Right. And that's got to be biblical, right?
Well, I haven't found that verse yet. I understand. And I understand the implication of it.
Right.
Because there is some truth in that, to the fact that you want to bring your best.
Yeah.
At the house of the Lord.
Yeah.
But also, it's that that great moment where I was glad when they said unto me, "Let's go into the house of the Lord."
Right.
And I just think that there is sometimes we've allowed something as simple as clothing to become a barrier to what's going on. I didn't understand this completely until I came back from Texas and was working at a church on a staff in South Florida, along the coast. My office was maybe 400 yards from the Intercoastal Waterway.
Really?
Right there at the bridge going across.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you left that position?
Yeah. Well, it was mutually understood. God had called me away. But at the end of the day, you talk about a Sunday morning crowd that sometimes came in, or part of the crowd would come in dressed again as you would expect in a quote unquote normal church environment. But some of the crowd would come in dressed to go to the beach because they were going to the beach as soon as it was done. And if you went too long on a Sunday morning, whoo, look out! That was that was bad news. You'd get in trouble. And so you,
shouldn't we be happy that they came?
Sure. Well, I would think that's the standard, right? Come as you are.
Yeah. I want people to come, and if somebody doesn't do something the way that we think they should do it, is there a possibility that that person doesn't know the Lord? Aren't we of the mind that saved people do not act like unsaved people?
Sure.
And so we get a lot like the Pharisees, Jeff, when we start pointing fingers to people. And, I think when Jesus got together with a crowd, there was a lot of laughing. There was a lot of enjoyment. Yeah. And I just think that, out of all the people, Christians shouldn't be the ones pointing fingers and being Pharisees.
Yeah. I think so. Church dress is part of that. Now again, I've seen people wear inappropriate things to church, but that would not only be inappropriate at church, they probably would have been inappropriate anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think you out of respect of the rest of the people there, you might have to deal with that every once in a while. But other than that, I mean, you know,
Right.
I don't get too bothered by
Is
such
there,
things.
is there something in the Bible where it says that preachers have to wear suits and ties?
Yeah, not in the version that not the version I lean into.
No, I didn't see
Praise
that
God.
either. But you have a lot of people that think that.
There is. Well, you know, around here, if I put on a coat, people think something's up.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong, or there's something special going on today because he put on a coat. I can't remember. I can't remember the last time I wore a tie.
Yeah. A funeral?
Even rare these days.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's open collar. That's just because, you know, dress style and what's appropriate. You know, they said be comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, or come as you would on Sunday. Well, you tell me wear my Sunday clothes, I'm wearing them right now. I mean, this is as good as it gets. But I think the point is your dress can't be the standard, and I think the comfort level, you know, is important because again, you know, if you're the more comfortable you are, I've always believed that the more you're able to worship unencumbered, and so which I think makes it fun.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what else have you seen in church that kind of gives that tradition superstition line that we walk?
Well, I'll never forget when I went to my last church that I was a senior pastor in. And it was time for the offering to be taken up, and there was a woman helping take the offering up. I mean, that was just a shocker for me because I'd never seen it before.
Really?
I was like, oh, this is awesome. You know?
Well, give me back up a little bit. So why was that? I mean, why had that never happened in the churches you were in before?
With the church environment that I had grown up in, you just never saw that. The men did everything. Okay. The men took the offering up. The men did this. The men did that. You know, the women did not share those kind of roles in the churches that I'd been in. And I just thought, well, you know, there's nothing in the Bible that says a woman can't help take up the offering.
No,
So
there's not.
it was just a different thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't throw me into conniption fit or anything like that. I was like, man, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about it?
Well, you know, most environments I've been in, women could have taken up the offering. I guess that's my church pilgrimage has been a little bit different, maybe. And now, of course, you know, the environment we're in, we don't take up the offering per se. We have a kiosk out in the narthex or the lobby that you can drop by and use your debit card.
Yeah, things have changed.
Because, you know, again, we tend to be cashless, but also you can drop a check, and we also, you know, we're always in a receiving mood, so you can also fill out your envelope and drop it in your envelope with the church name on it. So like whatever makes you feel most comfortable. Because again, that's just, I don't think that's something that you know, that's not a hill to die on. That's something you do to make it as easy as possible for people to access their ability to give, and we need that.
Yeah. You got any others?
You know, we hit in the original episode. We talked a little about the Lord's Supper,
Right.
A little bit. And we may have talked about this in another episode. Some churches have a Lord's Supper table. They call it the remembrance table.
Yep.
That is a part of the church decor. That for some reason that piece of furniture becomes almost sacred.
Yep.
And if you somehow misuse or don't use it in the right way, people get a little bit upset about that. I remember, you know, I used it one time like a table. I needed to get to a light, and so I had moved it in the worship center and put a ladder on top of it. And a well-meaning deacon came in about that time, and I don't know why he was doing that in the middle of the day. I was changing the light bulb, but was you know, appalled that I was using the table for something other than what it was intended for. And really made a big stink out of it.
Oh boy!
It became a crisis of some sort.
Oh boy! I can imagine.
Yeah,
I can imagine. Well, you know, the first church I pastored, when you had the Lord's Supper, You walk in on Sunday morning, there's like a sheet over the elements there.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, whenever we started the Lord's Supper, it was quite a to-do. One deacon would get on one side and one get on the other. They would pick it up, you know, almost like folding a flag. And they would do it like this, and then grab it like this, and then one would walk forward, and then the other one would grab it. You know, they had a certain way of doing it. And we had this old boy that got saved, and he was just so happy and just a joyful guy. Went from not knowing Jesus from John to becoming a Christian, excited about it, serving. And they had asked him to help serve the Lord's Supper one Sunday morning. And so he said, okay. And then before the service started, he just went up and got that sheet and just kind of crumpled it up and put it.
I thought you were about to say he pulled off like, and it's all still standing.
No. He picked it up and put it over on the pew, and you could have heard, you know, because that's not the way we do it. You know, we formally fold that, you know. And he didn't know. He was just happy about celebrating the Lord's Supper that morning, you know. But, you know, those are just some of the crazy things that we do to make other people.
And the thing about it is, I mean, and I think the takeaway point would be, I mean, it would be really easy for someone to hear this conversation and say, well, you guys are just irreverent. You don't hold anything as sacred.
Yeah.
But the answer is we do.
We do.
We hold a lot sacred. As a matter of fact,
a lot.
Anything that has to do with Jesus, we hold as sacred.
Very sacred.
But at the same time, you know, in the holiness, there's plenty of room to laugh about that because Jesus didn't do that at the Passover. There's no biblical mandate for doing that. And I think in a very practical, non-funny takeaway, it's important to remember that we all have our comfort levels of what we're comfortable with. And we always bring that into the church with us. And a couple of things we have to learn early on is one, just because something happens outside of your comfort zone doesn't mean it's not spiritual. We always hear that phrase, some red flags just went up. Well, what the heck does that mean? I mean, you know, okay, red flag went up based on what? Because our standard has to be biblical. And a lot of times people raise red flags and they have no understanding of why it's biblical, why it's not. And so understand that your comfort level, my comfort level, you know, can be radically different. And the important thing is it can't change who Jesus is and what he's done.
Right.
And then the other piece is that I tend to think that the pattern we see in Scripture, and we see this especially for Paul, you know, he would do whatever it took in whatever environment he was in to reach people for Jesus. And over this episode, you know, I've talked about, you know, what would happen at maybe a church in South Florida, beachside, might not be the same thing that happens at a rural church in the hills of Kentucky or on the plains of Tennessee or New Mexico.
Right.
And I think that cultural setting really does kind of define the way that worship will be done there, because that tends to be what people, their comfort level is, what they operate in.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And in there's a lot of room to discover joy and discover laughter. And I think that really does matter. And maybe that's the takeaway for this. Don't allow your comfort level to dictate the way that you experience Jesus, and don't allow that to rob you of the joy and the freedom that you have in Christ.
Right. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, most of it is small stuff. The big thing is Jesus.
That's right.
And we want that to be the big thing for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we've run out of time, and we're kind of at the end.
Yeah.
So we need to go home.
Yep.
But before we do, anything you need to say?
Yep. You just keep on laughing. And, I mean, if you got Jesus in your heart, you got a lot to rejoice over. And with rejoicing comes laughing. So remember that this week, and don't tap out.